Welcome back to Business Sunch on CNBC-TV18. Now let's move on and talk about JSW Steel as well as the BPSL case which was going on. And I just read the flashes for you all. A big relief that is coming in on that front. We have Ashmit to give us more details. The stock is trading with gains of 2% now. Ashmit, what is this big relief that has come in for JSW Steel? What does it mean for the company going forward as well? Ashmit, over to you.
Well, bear in mind that on just earlier this month, on 2nd of May, is when the Supreme Court had passed a sweeping order whereby it had set aside an insolvency process going back several years, going back 7 to 8 years. The JSW resolution plan had been struck down as being illegal. Now, it is in pursuance of that we saw former promoter Sanjay Singhal moving the NCLT, seeking enforcement of that order, seeking for liquidation of Bhushan Power and Steel. Now, what's important is that as of right now, the counsels for JSW Steel had moved the Supreme Court, whereby they expressed their concern that a review petition is in the works, that if liquidation is allowed at this stage, what that will translate into, what that will mean is that any review petition being filed subsequently will be rendered meaningless, will be academic, that there will be procedural complications, and it is on account of that the Supreme Court very clearly has held that in the interest of justice, to avoid any further complications, it is critical at this stage to ensure that status quo is maintained with respect to liquidation proceedings. So as far as the liquidation is concerned, Bhushan Power and Steel, no further liquidation will take place, at least not as of right now before the NCLT. And what we're very clearly going to understand is that both the COC as well as JSW Steel are contemplating filing of review petitions. That is clearly something that has been recorded. So clearly something that is coming. For now, very clearly, no liquidation is to take place, and that is review is likely to be filed. So that question on how accurate the Supreme Court was in a sweeping judgment dismissing the JSW application, that could very well happen in the Supreme Court once again.
Okay, Ashmit, thank you so much for that. But we do have senior advocate at Supreme Court, H.P. Radina, joining in with us as well. Mr. Radina, good afternoon. And in this latest update that we have coming in on the JSW Steel case as well with Bhushan Steel, how do you expect and by when do you expect this review to be filed? Is there a timeline for that? Is there any window? If you could start by helping us, giving us that details.
Well, it's a good news for JSW that the liquidation proceedings have been kept on hold. That's very good, because otherwise it would have led to a lot of issues and complications. Now, coming to your question, the question is the Supreme Court is now on vacation. And the Supreme Court will open only in the first week of July. So in the meanwhile, review petition will be can be filed. I don't think the bench which is currently sitting will take up that matter, because that's only in the case of very important matters like criminal law and all that. So the vacation bench will not hear this petition, but they can file a review petition. And as soon as the court reopens in the first week of July, the review petition will be taken up. In the meanwhile, they'll have to give some declaration that they will go by the old scheme, that they will have only the equity issue of shares. Because earlier, they had struck down that scheme on the ground that you have violated the scheme, and therefore we will not allow you to go ahead, because they were going to have optional convertible debentures instead of equity shares. So all that will now have to be considered by JSW. They'll have to review the whole thing and then go on a review petition, saying that we will abide by the scheme which was already approved.
Sure. So then after July also it will be taken up immediately, or will there be some 30-day time period before it is taken, and when we can expect that after the holiday break as well?
Well, I think that is up to the judges. It depends on what are the urgent matters are before them. There are hundreds of urgent applications which are filed and which come up at the time of hearing, because after 2 months break, there's always a lot of urgent petitions. So all depends on the workload of the judges. And of course, the bench to which it has been assigned. Depending on the workload of the bench, they will decide. Sure. But obviously, the liquidation proceedings will be kept on hold until the review petition is considered.
And sir, does this, show or indicate as well an easing of the Supreme Court stance going forward as well?
Yes. Sorry, I didn't get your question. What is?
Does this spell an easing of the Supreme Court stance? Is that an indication coming in after this, what we're hearing right now?
Well, it's not easing. It's that they have now been been told about the new facts, that what are the facts, what are the consequences if liquidation proceedings are commenced immediately, and what would be the balance of convenience. So having regard to all these factors, the Supreme Court has now reconsidered its view based on the new issues of liquidation and what are the consequences if you go ahead with the liquidation straight away. So I think the court has taken a fair and equitable view, taking into account the balance of convenience, and they have felt that it is better to keep their liquidation proceedings on hold until the review petition is considered by the bench once the Supreme Court reconvenes after vacation.
Okay, Mr. Ranina, thank you so much for joining in with us and giving us this latest update also on what it means for them and when will the review petition actually be taken. And an easing stance also seems like it is what is coming in from the Supreme Court as well. As of now, JSW Steel holding on to gains of almost 2% in today's trading session. The announcement that came in was in terms of the big relief for JSW. Supreme Court directed a status quo of liquidation proceedings in NCLT. So that is what we are keeping an eye out on. But on that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. More news and updates on the other side.